China today is celebrating the 100th birthday of the Chinese Communist Party. Now, when I say China is celebrating this birthday, that is not quite accurate. This is, in fact, a massive party organised by the communist dictatorship itself, with the Chinese people told to join in or else. In fact, the way these celebrations are being run tells you everything about what kind of Nazi-like totalitarian state this really is. Let me show you a few things so that you will know the truth when someone says, hey, look at these lovely pictures on TV. The Chinese really do love their communist rulers. Maybe there's something in this authoritarianism. Well, first, not all do love their communist bosses. I mean, China is a police state, yet someone this week still dared to set fire to the gates of the Chinese Foreign Ministry in Beijing. And if the Chinese Communist Party is so loved by its people, why does the party not trust them? Why have shops in Beijing been banned this week from selling things that can be used to start a big fire, like gas bottles? Why are armoured trucks patrolling Hong Kong? Why is the capital, Beijing, now crawling with soldiers, police and guards ahead of the celebrations and posting as many as 200 police at a single city roadblock? Now, these pictures, by the way, come from the Twitter account of a very fine Australian journalist, Kate Cadell, who gets followed by security goons like the ones she photographed when she goes out to sensitive areas like Xinjiang. Now, as Kate reports, to make sure that people are cheering the Communist Party, or at least keeping their mouths shut, Chinese authorities this year banned anyone from criticising China's official heroes, and it set up a website so people can dob in others who have challenged the official history. And last week, China also shut down Hong Kong's biggest pro-democracy newspaper. And in Beijing's central district, ahead of these celebrations, security officials were going door to door checking who was in each home and if they actually had the dictatorship's permission to be there. How desperate is this regime to control its people and their thoughts, to brainwash them? Kate says that when she recently went to Tibet, which is devoutly Buddhist, she could see not a single poster anywhere of the Dalai Lama, the spiritual leader. But there were posters everywhere of dictator Xi Jinping, even in Tibet's College of Buddhism, which now must spend 40% of its teaching time teaching not Buddhism, but communist-approved political and cultural courses. The grip of this dictatorship is incredible. So when people try to tell you that the Chinese people support their Communist Party, ask them why the party cannot trust them to speak freely, to meet freely, or even follow their faith freely. Joining me is the country's best foreign affairs writer, Greg Sheridan of the Australian newspaper. Greg, thanks for your time. Have we got any way of knowing exactly how truly popular this dictatorship is?
Well, Andrew, it's great to be with you. I think what you said is right there. The party doesn't trust the people at all. You remember that great Cold War joke, you know, the party has lost confidence in the people, it's decided to dissolve them and form a new one. Well, that's been the long-term project of the Chinese Communist Party. I think there is a measure of support for the leadership. It's a bit like the old Saudi royal family. They've got so many people on the payroll that the people on the payroll, you know, the Saudi royal family had 3,000 princes or something, and they all had households. And the other thing is, the one thing the Communist Party can point to in its favour is that it has delivered rising living standards for a long time. But there's no doubt that Chinese people want more freedom. And whenever they have the chance, they exercise freedom remarkably well and responsibly until the Chinese Communist Party crushed it. Hong Kong was a society under the rule of law. And of course, Taiwan is a living rebuke to the Chinese Communist Party because it's a perfectly peaceful democracy with free elections and the peaceful handover of power and so on. It's only in mainland China itself that the party has refused all democratic, all liberal rights. And it's always been a Leninist party. It is developing a kind of element of modern Stalinism about it now.
It sure has. I mean, some of the scenes that we were just showing there of people in rank formations chanting slogans and all that kind of stuff. I don't think we've seen that really since Mao Zedong. I mean, the personality cult is really quite astonishing. And I don't doubt there will be a lot of people who do support the Communist Party because it's controlled the news agenda, it controlled what children get taught and what they hear about the world for so long. But I'll give an example about this personality cult because it's really freaky. It really is like back to Mao Zedong days. China this week launched a website, Greg, named China's Diplomacy in the New Era. And China's foreign ministry spokesman yesterday, at this press conference, crawled to the dictator in praising it. He said this was the official platform to popularise Xi Jinping thought in diplomacy. Now I'm quoting him. And to showcase Xi Jinping's Xi Jinping being the dictator, his important foreign affairs activities, to showcase literature on Xi Jinping thought on diplomacy, with the aim, he said, of demonstrating major country diplomacy with Chinese characteristics guided by Xi Jinping thought and diplomacy. That is exactly what he said. And he said, we're going to follow this Xi Jinping thought and take pioneering steps to make great contributions to national rejuvenation. I mean, that is astonishing bootlicking by a senior official.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Andrew. I mean, one of the notable things today was that Xi Jinping wore a Mao suit, and he was the only one there who wore a Mao suit. Xi Jinping himself suffered in the Cultural Revolution, but he is devoted to Mao. I had a column in the Australian today trying to explore both the ideology and the culture of the Communist Party. In the old Cold War days, we used to study the culture of communism because we understood that that was dominant in the Soviet Union. Because the Chinese communists had a veneer of capitalism, we thought communist ideology was gone. In fact, the Chinese Communist Party is deeply ideological, and at its senior levels, it actually believes this ideology. Now, the ideology is crazy, but it's a bit like Islamic State believing in Islamist ideology or any religion believing in a religion. From the outside, it looks irrational, but from the inside, it has a certain compelling logic. And Xi Jinping, you're absolutely right to say, is reverting back to Mao. He's put himself on the same level as Mao. So the official ideology of China is Marxism, Leninism, Mao Zedong thought. Marxism, Leninism is the eternal truth of communism. Mao Zedong thought is the application of that eternal truth to the circumstances of China. Xi Jinping now is elevating Xi Jinping thought to this same level. In my column today, I said they resemble Roman emperors who were given a kind of deity status. They were made to be gods in the Roman pantheon. And indeed, people villages used to say prayers to Chairman Mao, and Xi is elevating himself into this same status. It's very dangerous for the whole world because China under Mao was dangerous, but it was 1/100th as powerful as it is now. China today is immensely powerful. And I also argue in a piece tomorrow, this should be a wake-up call for Australia. We need to reorder our national defence efforts to have an asymmetric strategy aimed at imposing costs on China if they do something untowards towards us, instead of which we're spending billions of dollars on armoured vehicles and tanks. I mean, how many tanks are going to fight in the South China Sea? This is crackers, and our senior people in our defence organisation are trapped in a kind of terrible institutional inertia.
Yeah, I tell you what, if we're down to fighting China with tanks, then they're already here and it's already too late. Australia this week, Greg, pulled out its last troops from Afghanistan, or our last troops. So we've been there for 20 years, of course, after throwing out the Taliban and Al-Qaeda after the September 11 attacks. Now, we've had 41 Australians died trying to keep Afghanistan safe from the Taliban extremists. But now we're pulling out of that country with the Americans. They're pulling out later this year. And we see, almost all their soldiers, and we see Afghan soldiers have been replacing what we've been doing, surrendering exactly the areas like around Tarin-Kot where many of our soldiers are actually based. Now, the Taliban claim to, in fact, have taken back anything up to 80% of Afghanistan. So was this war for nothing?
Well, Andrew, look, that's a very difficult question, and it's right of you to ask the hard questions. I would say the intervention was completely justified at the time because Afghanistan had sheltered and assisted Osama bin Laden, who brought about the 9/11 terror attacks. But I think it should have been time limited, and the Americans and we handled it very badly. We never committed to any strategic role, but the Americans have been there for 20 years. They've never had a 20-year strategy. They had 21-year strategies. Now, it's not rocket science to say you were never going to turn Afghanistan into a liberal democracy. What you needed to do was find a group of Afghans who could rule their country, who would not commit genocide, and who you could support. Now, the Soviets, when they withdrew, they kept their government going for years and years and years just by giving it $3 billion of aid a year and equipping its air force. And the Najibullah government fought because it knew what would happen to it if the Mujahideen ever took over. After 20 years, the US and we have not established an Afghan government which can hold its territory. Now, I don't believe you can go on with these commitments forever. And indeed, one terrible consequence of this commitment has been both the Americans and we have distorted our force structure. So we have a massive challenge from China now, and we've still got a force structure to deploy into Afghanistan. You've got to come out at some point.
That is so true. And also, we've lost so much prestige, of course, by pulling out. Taliban will come over. They'll topple that government. I don't know how long it'll take. Won't take long. Or they'll reach some sort of threatening compromise, and then we'll look like it was all really stupid. But Greg Sheridan, thank you so much indeed for your time.
Great to be with you, Andrew. Thank you.